This is the tutorial video for the Gamalux Perimeter Series 6-inch sample case. Here you have the hard-sided case with latches. When you open up the case, ensure that this rectangular section here is facing up and that the latches open upward. Open up the case and you will find inside you will find a back plate. Remove the back plate. You'll notice that it has felt on the bottom of the legs. Very important that you do not scratch your customers' tables, so we included the felt. Now, once the legs are opened up, you will see that we have a sliding arm or a rotating arm. That arm will correspond with the stud that is on the leg. So remove the remove the nut, exposing the stud, attach the arm onto the stud, and then replace the nut. Now your back plate is assembled, and again, felt is facing down. So for the purposes of your demonstrations, you will be explaining that this back plate represents an unfinished wall. On that unfinished wall will be attached the plaster trim that can be shipped from the factory before the fixtures are actually even built. This plaster trim can be cut to length in the field, or we can measure it to exact length here at the factory and provide it in that length. This is an extruded aluminum piece. It is rigid and yet somewhat flexible. So if there are curvatures in the wall, this piece is going to follow those curvatures in the wall. However, be very careful. This product is not marketed for curved walls. It's very important that you understand that and that your clients understand that. This will accommodate walls that are unintentionally imperfect. It will not accommodate walls with a built radius or a designed radius. It's very important that you understand that. Now, once this piece has been installed onto the unfinished wall, in this particular sample we're using rivets, but in the field they'll use screws to attach this to the wall. We recommend shimming behind this piece, the reason being that the wall itself is not going to be perfectly straight, but we want this piece to be as straight as reasonably possible on the wall. So we do recommend wood shimming behind this piece as it's being installed onto the wall. Now here you'll be able to see in the side in the side view here, you can see that that there are mud ribs on this plaster trim, and those mud ribs have been covered over with a length of fiberglass tape, a very common material that the drywaller will use in the field. After that fiberglass tape has been applied to the bottom or to the mud ribs portion of the plaster trim, then the drywaller will come in, or the mud guy will come in and begin to mud down the wall. So you can see the added thickness of the mud material or the plaster as it has been brought down the wall. Of course, after that material dries and is smoothed over, then the painter will come in and texture the wall or just paint the wall as per the architectural instructions. Now, it is very important that you understand we recommend on walls where the plaster trim is being mudded in, we recommend a level 5 finish on the wall. Certainly that's going to be an absolutely pristine finish on the wall, and we know that not every job is going to call for that kind of a finish on the wall. However, if you don't have a perfectly flat wall, then when you use the grazing optic, you're going to be grazing light past all the imperfections in that wall, and you're actually going to highlight every imperfection on the wall. So with the grazing optic, if you are installing this fixture onto a flat wall with no texture on the wall, meaning stone or brick or something along those lines, then you're going to highlight every imperfection on the wall. It's very important you understand that. So our spec sheet recommends a level 5 finish, but our installation instructions call for a minimum of a 2-foot blend down the wall as flat as possible. So here we are demonstrating now the plaster trim that has been mudded into a designed flat wall. Now, once you've got that assembled, you'll remove the foam from the top of the sample case, and then remove the sample fixture itself. Now, the sample fixture, you want to make sure that as you're handling it, you handle the body of the fixture itself. Do not try to handle the reflector of the fixture, as it'll get greasy with your fingerprints. Even if you have clean hands, you certainly don't want to be handling the reflector. So we recommend you handle the back of the fixture, handle the sides of the fixture, but do not handle the reflector. Now, to demonstrate how the fixture is going to be installed, you will, standing above the fixture, align the reflector of the fixture into the gap that's in the base of the plaster trim. Align that, set that reflector into the gap, and then angle the fixture back towards the wall. Now I'll turn around so you can see the details here. You'll notice on the top of the wall we have these 2 swing out brackets, and they've got little slots in them. That slot is going to interface directly with the bulkhead of the fixture. So we just angle out, and now the fixture is captured and mounted onto the back wall. Undo the twist tie from the power feed and plug into socket. You will have on the fixture, you've got a dimming ballast, so you can dim down so as not to blind your guests or your attendees, clients. Now up inside the fixture, I'm going to turn here, and I'm going to shut the ballast off entirely so you can see a bit better. Up inside the fixture, you'll notice that we've got the lamp barrier pre-installed. This is how the fixture will ship if you specify the fixture with the grazing optic using the lamp barrier. So we'll just go through all the components here. We have it's a 2-lamp cross section, in this case 2-lamp T5. You have the lamp barrier, which is easily removed or installed from below. We'll pretend I'm below here. I can't see up inside the fixture at all, but it's very simple to locate the groove that this extrusion snaps into. You notice that it is a C-shaped extrusion, and there is a groove right about here, or a rod-shaped extrusion, if you will, that will snap. The C-shaped channel will just snap right onto it, rotate upward, and there's a spring mechanism attached into the extrusion of the housing that will hold this piece snapped into place. So for relamping, we'll go ahead and go through the relamping procedure. Very simple. The contractor will, here, let me get underneath. Contractor is working from underneath the fixture, and we have this angled backwards so the fixture doesn't fall forward. Under normal circumstances, of course, the wall will be vertical. Whoever's performing maintenance on the fixture will reach up, pull down the lamp barrier, and then after when the fixture is perfectly vertical, the lamp barrier will not fall. But if it's pushed back slightly, it can be removed from its extrusion. So we've designed it in such a way that when the lamp barrier is just sitting, resting, it cannot fall. So you would need to just rotate it backwards slightly to disengage the catch mechanism. Set that aside. And when we ship the fixture, we ship them with, or for your sample fixtures, we're shipping them with foam sleeves on the lamps, so that if any damage happens during shipping, at least all that damage, or at least most of the damaged lamp will be captured inside the lamp sleeve. So we'll just pretend that I'm the maintenance person removing old lamps, and I've just found myself some new lamps. Because this is a 2-lamp cross-section, there are two lamp sockets up in here. We want to make sure that you can identify, just by feeling up inside the fixture, you can identify which lamp socket is low and which lamp socket is high. I can do this again without looking, without using a mirror or anything like that. So I will take the first lamp and I'll identify the upper lamp socket, snap or slide the lamp into, oops, that was the lower. Find the upper lamp socket, slide the lamp pins into that socket again, and then rotate 90 degrees. Take the second lamp, locate the lower lamp socket, slide in, rotate 90 degrees, and now I can turn the fixture on to demonstrate how easy it is to relamp the fixture. I'll shut that off. And again, lamp barrier snaps into place, rotates up. I recommend you try that maybe 3 or 4 times at the office before you take this out to a client, just so you're not trying to fumble around being unfamiliar with these components. You want to be able to quickly remove these components, remove a lamp, show how fabulous it is, how easy it is to relamp the fixture. Snap a lamp back up in there, snap the rotate the lamp socket back in, and then of course fire it up for them, showing how easy it is to relamp the fixture. Okay, so that's the relamping and the lamp barrier. Now notice that the line of the lamp barrier from the top of the lamp to the top of the lamp barrier, you'll notice that we are making, let me grab a piece of paper here. You'll notice that we're making basically a straight line from the top of the lamp and the top of the lamp barrier to right about here on the wall, right about this point. The reason why that's important is you can easily demonstrate that if you had a shiny material on the wall, like a mirror or a shiny tile that was coming all the way up to the top of the wall, that you'll never be able to get a reflection, you'll never see a reflection of the lamp in the mirror or in that shiny tile, and that's the purpose, one of the purposes of the lamp barrier. The second thing the lamp barrier does for us is, you'll notice that it is a little bit shiny, right? So it's reflective. Any light that hits that lamp barrier is going to bounce up into the main reflector of the fixture, up into the main reflector, so it can be shot straight down the wall through the 6-inch aperture between the ceiling trim and the wall itself. So in the grazing optic, we actually have a very tight candle power curve shooting light straight down the wall. And again, that's why you don't want to use a grazing optic on a flat wall unless you know that it is in fact truly flat. It's going to be very beautiful. You create these wonderful shadows. If you've got brick or stone or any kind of textured material on the wall, you'll create very, very dynamic shadows. So that is the grazing optic. For the ambient illumination optic fixture, what we do at the factory is, instead of providing the lamp barrier, we don't provide the lamp barrier. And instead of using a semi-specular aluminum reflector, we use a white reflector that's matte. So that matte white diffuser, when light hits that matte white reflector, a lot of light is going to hit the top of the wall. Once it hits the top of the wall, depending on the reflectivity of the wall, we're going to get a lot of light bouncing back out into space, and you can see the reflection of the light on my hand. This is it's very effective demonstration when you take the lamp barrier and have the lamp barrier installed and then remove it. Now you notice even in the camera here, we're noticing quite a significant difference between the illumination here with the lamp barrier installed versus the lamp barrier not installed. It actually gets quite bright. Now the camera is compensating because of the illumination, but in live action, if you will, when you show the difference to a prospective client, a specifier, they'll be able to see very clearly how you're getting about 20% more illumination onto the top of the wall, and then thereby bouncing that out into the space. I also recommend shutting off the lights in your demonstration space. Maybe set the fixture 5 or 10 feet away from a wall, facing the wall, and then remove that lamp barrier, and you'll be able to see how much more light you're going to get bouncing off of this fixture or off of this wall out into the space. And the concept here is the more light you can get bouncing out into the space with ambient illumination, possibly the fewer fixtures you might be able to you might need for other general illumination in the space. Certainly you can't eliminate other fixtures entirely, but depending on the size of the space and the reflectivity of the wall, you may be able to reduce the number of fixtures required in the space. So this fixture actually can perform more illumination function than just perimeter lighting. Now that is, so we've discussed the lamp barrier, the relamping. We've discussed how the fixture can be mounted onto the back wall. For actual installation in the field, there will be a couple brackets on the back of the fixture here, L-shaped brackets that will attach to the wall above the fixture. This is a suspended fixture. You'll notice that we have a couple. Let me show you. It is a suspended fixture. You'll notice that we provided holes up here in the bulkhead, and this is so that wires can be attached to suspend this fixture from above. So the mounting on the wall does not completely mount the fixture in the space. The mounting on the wall just simply removes the gap, the traditional gap that's usually found between other competitor products and the wall. So the mounting on the wall just brings the fixture to the wall and attaches it to the wall, but the fixture itself still must be suspended by wires or rod from above. Now we'll talk about the ceiling trim. You'll notice that I don't have a ceiling trim on the bottom of this fixture. It's so that I can demonstrate all these features. So when we shipped our perimeter sample to you, we did not install the ceiling trim on the bottom of the fixture here. When we ship our fixtures from the factory for regular jobs, the ceiling trim is always installed. But I'll show you how you can install this easily and demonstrate the ceiling trim to your client. Here we have a cardboard box in the sample case. Just open up the cardboard box carefully because you'll need to use it again. Inside the cardboard box you have a hex wrench and you have a length of ceiling trim. Now the ceiling trim, you'll notice that it is essentially two pieces in one. We have on this side we have a flanged trim, and this would be the bottom of that flange trim. This will be visible in the space. It's a visible flange that will carry the drywall or the grid or wood ceiling. On this side we have a mud flange, and you notice that we actually have two. It's an upper flange and a lower flange. What will happen here is the drywall is going to get nested between those two pieces and then screwed up through the drywall into the backing flange. That's going to make this piece a permanent part of the ceiling. It's important that you understand that. So that is for gyp or plaster type ceilings. So face those flanges towards you, and I'll need the hex wrench. Face those flanges towards you, and you'll notice that there are probably going to be a couple little marks underneath the housing here where we've already tested the set screws. There are two set screws, a minimum of 2 set screws in your flange piece. And what you'll do is align this extrusion with the grooves in the bottom of the housing. Once those are aligned, you'll be able to then tighten set screw number 1. And if necessary, you could just leave it with set screw number 1, but it might be better to also tighten up a second set screw. Second set screw. And if there are multiple set screws, more than 2, you don't really need all of them. I think we've got 5 or 6 holes in this one in particular. We don't need the other set screws. We just provide it in case maybe you lose one. Okay, so with 2 set screws installed, now the ceiling trim has been installed onto the bottom of the fixture housing, and now you can see that there is a 6-inch aperture, or 6-inch gap, if you will, between the wall and the ceiling trim, and this, of course, is where all the illumination will come out. Showing again the flanged trim as well as the mud flange in one piece. Now we have two heights of ceiling trim. We have what we call the ceiling level optic, where we've got the reflector hitting about 1.5 inches above the ceiling line. And then we also offer a second or a taller ceiling trim, which is about 3 inches tall, so that the reflector assembly will hit about 3.6 inches above the ceiling line. So depending on the height of the ceiling trim, that will determine how high the reflector sits above the ceiling line. The reason why we do this is because in a grazing optic, number one, nobody wants to really look at a semi-specular aluminum reflector. So what we do is we use a taller ceiling trim in the grazing optic, which will allow the reflector to hit the wall about 3.66 inches above the ceiling line. What that does, by raising that grazing optic above this aperture, we are focusing the beam of light, if you will, through the 6-inch aperture in a more narrow way, allowing for a more distinct grazing optic. In the ambient illumination optic option, we use the white reflector, and we want as much light as possible, which is hitting the top of the wall. We want any light that hits the top of the wall to bounce back out into the space. So in the ambient illumination optic, we're going to use a shorter ceiling trim, the one that you have installed here. And that shorter ceiling trim will allow any light that hits the top of the wall, or a great deal of the light that hits the top of the wall, to bounce past the ceiling, past the ceiling trim out into the space. So that is why we offer two heights of ceiling trims. Now, pertaining to the reflectors themselves, you might be able to see right here, there is another extrusion behind the housing, behind that reflector, and you can see that extrusion hitting the back of the reflector right here. What this does is it keeps that reflector into the proper parabolic shape. Now, you also might be able to see that we've got a, right here, this upper extrusion that has kind of a V-shaped catch. And you'll notice that the top of the reflector sits into that V-shaped catch. Now, this is a very important part of our design, in that it allows for us to be able to align the reflectors as they are, as the run of fixtures continues down a corridor. So if I were to loosen up one of these set screws, I could actually push that extrusion away. Oh, I think I have to do both. Gotta find it. Now, this does tend to be a bit more difficult. This is not something that's intended to be done in the field, and I'm not trying to hide it from you. It's just I need to be able to see it right now, so that I can work with it. Now, when I loosen up those 3 set screws, I can then move this extrusion forward and back. Notice that right there. What this allows me to do, number one, I can now, if I loosen it up all the way, I'll be able to actually remove this reflector from below. If for some reason I have to get behind the reflector, maybe they become damaged in shipping. Maybe during installation, the contractor ends up banging up some of these reflectors. Well, they can actually be replaced in the field without taking the fixture out of the ceiling. That's an important feature. Now, the other thing this does for us, because we are we're capturing that reflector inside this movable extrusion, we can actually change the pitch of the curvature of the reflector. So in a very long run, sometimes these reflectors don't like to line up properly. You may have found that to be the case with most competitor products. With ours, that may be the case also, but we provide this alignment mechanism up inside the fixture, which allows for the reflectors to be basically loosened up or tightened up at the joints wherever necessary, so that the reflectors can then be allowed to align in the field, which is a big, I think, a big advantage. We put these details into our products so that they can be, so they're going to look good as long as that installation is as long as that product is installed. I'm just going to go ahead and tighten these up again. Now try not to mess with these too much because you may end up damaging the reflector. This really should only be done once in a job site if the reflectors didn't line up properly, or maybe if the wall is a little bit wonky. Sometimes those reflectors will have to be coaxed into a compromised position so that they can line up properly. So I wouldn't recommend doing a whole lot of what I just did, but I do want you to know that we do have the capability to align these reflectors in a continuous run, even if the wall itself, again, is slightly imperfect. That's very important. Another thing to note is that the reflector itself is a bit flexible. And remember I mentioned earlier that the plaster trim is also somewhat flexible. This allows for a little bit of forgiveness on a wall that isn't perfectly straight. So, because we're using rigid aluminum extrusion for the housings themselves are going to want to be perfectly straight. But if the wall isn't, if the wall has some gentle curvatures in it, again, unintended curvatures, the plaster trim, the flexibility of the plaster trim and the flexibility of the reflector will allow for a straight fixture, essentially, to be installed onto an imperfect or slightly bowed wall. Again, this is not intended to be used on a designed radius, but in a straight wall, if that wall is not perfectly straight, we still don't have problems installing onto that wall because of the flexibility of the plaster trim as well as the reflector assembly. So I will now demonstrate how to take down the sample. First, start with the ceiling trim. I recommend you support the ceiling trim. Don't just let it dangle because it could fall and damage this back wall, or could also damage your customer's table. So the ceiling trim will be placed back into the cardboard box. Set your hex wrench into the bag. Set this into the cardboard box as well. Close up the box. And set the box aside. Wrap up your power cord. This is really exciting, I'm sure, watching me wrap up a power cord. Definitely become familiar with the product sample. There are a couple sharp edges here. You just want to make sure you're not snagging a sweater or your shirt or your skin on these sharp edges. So definitely become familiar with this thing. Work with it a few times before you take it out to show it to a customer. Okay, so got the power cord wrapped up. Now, again, supporting the fixture to make sure it doesn't fall, I will slide the catch brackets back in, lift up the fixture. When you set the fixture into the sample case, set it in with the reflector facing forward. So, like so. The reflector is facing forward. So let the heaviest part of the fixture, the extrusion, let the heaviest part of the fixture be facing back towards the hinge of the sample case. All right. Now set your power cord next to the fixture. Make sure it's not sticking out of the case so you don't damage the cord when you close the case. All right. Now the fixture has been set inside, again, with the reflector aperture facing up and the reflector on the forward side of the case. Set the ceiling trim in front, like so. Replace the foam, have the fingers facing down, and you'll notice that there is a cutout in the foam. That cutout corresponds with the handle of the case. Set that foam in, and then disassemble the back plate. Unscrew the nut lift the arm, rotate it back in, close up the leg, replace the nut. Set the panel face down or finished side down. Very important that you set it face down in the sample case, face down, and again with the cutout portion corresponding with the location of the handle. So this is set down. Do not set it face up or it will become wildly damaged as you're carrying your case around. Okay, face down. Reach back, close your case. You may get some obstruction here. That's okay. Just kind of move things around a little bit. You may also need to tuck the foam in. That's okay. We want a nice snug fit, so just tuck the foam in as necessary. Snap, snap, and you're ready to go. Thank you very much. Call with questions.